and welcome to Off-Grid Journey. I am your host, Drew Lamb, and I am joined today by some very special guests, my friends Andrew Mount from Southern Oregon Aquaponics and John Cross from AquaponicTek. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different on Off-Grid. We always focus on individual solutions, what you can do on your own. And when we talk in terms of off-grid, we're usually thinking about bugging out, or disconnecting from society. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I wanted to pull back a little bit. Imagine that we're looking at ourselves through Google Earth and we're zoomed in really close. And what I want to do today is zoom back a bit and look at our broader community and look at what we can do by working with others to achieve food sovereignty, energy independence, and how that can be accomplished. Any money off this show, but even if I don't, I'm going to kick him some money, and I don't have to, but it's the right thing to do, and he's a great musician, and I appreciate the use of his music. And so for all of you guys out there that are putting together shows and podcasts and whatnot, you should check that out. I want to bring on my guests right now. Andrew is with us via Skype, and John's right here at our in-farm studio. Andrew, welcome to the show. John, welcome to the show.
Greetings.
So, Andrew, I wanted to start off with you on these topics, and what has been your goal? As you started Southern Oregon Aquaponics, what was your vision? Your vision of the future. Put on your futurist hat for a moment. And let's talk about solutions that we've been working toward.
Yes, definitely. Well, solutions means that you do have a vision, because let's just admit it. Humanity can be innovative and genius enough to get itself out of almost any fix that it finds itself in. But you have to be smart. So food system development is what Southern Oregon Aquaponics thinks is the smartest choice for social entrepreneurship, meaning there's two ways to look at the value of a food system. One is just in terms of the money that changes hands, and another is how well does it serve the people, and how well does it serve the planet. So does it serve the people by making food more accessible and affordable? Or is it if you can't pay, you can't play kind of marketplace? You see, and I don't believe that people should be held to ransom over the cost of food, because that doesn't make any sense, especially if you live in an agricultural economy or someplace that's smart enough to get its act together around what I call agroecology, which is integrating food systems into social and environmental justice, and also just the industry of agriculture done sustainably can bolster a local economy, can ensure community resilience, and some of the social values that we're all looking for, which is equity, security, safety. All those things are part of what's called the horizontal axis of the value chain. Those things I just mentioned, safety, security, and equity, and access to food, they're not really about whether you can pay. They're about whether the system is well designed enough so that the inefficiencies have been weeded out. Therefore, you have a much more functional food system that services a wider base of the population.
You're making some really good points here. We're victims of this corporatocracy that is implemented through the warfare welfare state. And you talk in terms of efficiency, and we have, just millions of people signed up on, various programs, like where we're at, the Oregon Trail Cards and welfare programs and whatnot. And, the government takes a huge amount of resources to implement these things. Like myself, I'm an anarchist, and so I don't think that government is a solution to anything, and I don't want to get into politics on this show per se. But this is a really good point, because you still want to, even anarchists and voluntarists want to help their neighbors, but they want to do it voluntarily and not by force. A common complaint that I hear from people about organic food is that it's too expensive. They can't afford it, and so they have to go for the junk GMO food and food that's...
Well, there are other issues. Like am I interrupting you, by the way?
Yeah, let me just finish my thought on this a little bit. But I don't think that it has to be that way. Organic food, healthy food, locally produced food doesn't have to be elitist. And I think, like myself, and I'd like to reach out to other small farmers out there to work toward making food available and affordable to those who need it.
Well, that's what Southern Oregon Aquaponics is primarily dedicated to do. I recall before Van Jones became a White House sensation and now a CNN sensation on Crossfire, he used to speak all around the country, and I saw him at UC Santa Cruz and got to shake his hand. And he basically coined the term eco-apartheid, which basically means that the only people who can be green are those who can afford to be green, because you can shop at Whole Foods and shit. Pardon my language, I'm not supposed to swear on radio programs, but it is kind of an injustice that we're talking about here, where the idea of organic is now equated with elitist. You even said it just now. So we can't do that. We need to just make good food available to everyone. Now that's where I get into things like, why can't the food system be largely a public good? Why does everybody have to believe that market forces alone will dictate our future systems development agenda? Why can't it be a social mandate or social priority to develop a food system that's more resilient and serves all people? In fact, that's actually happening in the Rogue Valley of Southern Oregon. We are, by virtue of the fact that we have a group called the Rogue Valley Food System Network in place that represents many stakeholders in the food economy. They're also working to educate people and make food more available and build the horizontal elements of the value chain directly through social work. And that's the kind of stuff I love. And in fact, I want businesses to adopt that as a part of their agenda. So Southern Oregon Aquaponics, just to toot my own horn for 30 seconds, is a social business modeled after the social business ethos of Muhammad Yunus, the Nobel laureate who started Grameen Bank. In fact, we've had some early success in the launching of Southern Oregon Aquaponics because we won an award at the Oregon Social Business Challenge, which was hosted and inspired really by Muhammad Yunus. So I think social business is a valid choice in the 21st century when resources are becoming scarce and when local economies really do need stewardship and people to take leadership roles within them. And businesses themselves should be chartered to alleviate social ills when they can. And a broken food system is a great big social ill.
Now, you would think that locally produced food would be more affordable.
Well, it can be.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about very low food miles,
correct?
Fewer middlemen. One thing that I've seen that one of the big barriers is that people need to change their shopping habits. We're seeing super Walmarts opening up all over the place. Even here where we're at in the Rogue Valley, brand new super Walmart. And people are going there to do their grocery shopping.
There's two of them here within 20 minutes of each other.
But if people changed their habits, if they actually went to the farmers markets, we have at least 3 going on each week in a few different locations between Medford and Ashland. and there's others, and there's CSAs and so on and so forth. But if people made a commitment to changing their shopping habits and purchasing their produce and other things at these markets, that would increase demand. It would create an opportunity for more players.
Well, if I'm allowed to say one more thing about my company, we actually have a very specific agenda to make food more accessible through an actual food hub situated in the heart of one of the food deserts in Medford. And if we can actually subscribe people directly and we triangulate the largest concentration of people with a proposed food hub site, then we could get food from Southern Oregon Aquaponics that isn't going to the high-end restaurant market. We can get it at low cost into the food deserts, because basically, as I understand it, Ray's Food Place is about to close two more stores, and some other grocery store up in that area has closed in Medford, northeast Medford, and places like that, and other places in Medford that I'm not as familiar with as I need to be, because this is supposed to be my job. But at any rate, we are going to go take surveys door to door in some of these food deserts, and we're doing that partially in conjunction with the Center for Sustainability and the Rogue Valley Food System Network, who are also trying to collect this data. And so we're trying to participate as a good citizen in the food economy and make sure that we know where the hardest hit areas are in terms of food insecurity, and then go after those with food hubs, with low-cost CSA boxes, partially sponsored by for-profit businesses like Southern Oregon Aquaponics, and maybe even, I have to just, this is the most incredible thing that's happened to me so far, I guess, as a social entrepreneur, is that I registered to be part of the Food System Network, and it turns out I'm the first sponsoring organization to jump in. Nobody else who has an organization has, before me, become a sponsoring organization of the Rogue Valley Food System Network, which just shows you we're really at the early stages of this movement. But it can blossom into something that will create resilience in the food economy.
So is this something that can be done in a voluntary way, without the intervention of government organizations?
There are no government organizations involved in this social movement that I know of yet. This is all a volunteer effort organized between people who have expressly worked to build the food economy at an economic level, that means on the vertical axis of the value chain, and those like Access in Medford, who are founding members of the steering committee of the Rogue Valley Food System Council, now called the Food System Network. They have been active in working on the horizontal elements of the food system value chain, and the way they did that was they held a whole bunch of dinners and brought the stakeholders in the food economy in and asked them a bunch of questions and said, where's this system of ours need fixing? And they collated and collected all that data and put it in a research report called the Jackson County Food System Assessment, which is found online in a PDF format at Access. I think their website is accesshelps.org, accesshelps.org. Anyway, we're doing everything we can to know the problems and address them through other initiatives such as Slow Money. We happen to have the only Slow Money chapter in the whole state of Oregon, based right here in the Rogue Valley. Why? Because people are waking up to the need to bring investors closer into the food system, producers, distributors. The value chain does need development on the vertical axis. It absolutely does. And there are various strategies for aggregating the food economy so that you reduce duplication of effort, you improve the distribution of foods to chosen markets at wholesale rates, which gives the farmer an added security because he knows he can sell everything he grows. Normally, people try to grow for niche markets because they can't afford to sell their produce at wholesale rates. But if you aggregate the food economy, that changes. And you also need to create finance mechanisms such as microlending, which we are working on. When I say we, it's because I'm a founding member of this local Slow Money chapter. The idea is to bring more money and more finance, like social finance, into the picture of food system development.
What is social finance?
It basically means everybody deciding that we're not going to let market forces alone prevail. We're going to say, whoa, you're right. investment in food, farms, and fertility really matters to whether we have a resilient and robust local economy. So let's support that sector. We already have $5 million a year of organic produce in Jackson County, okay? In Jackson County alone, I found that in the USDA Census of Agriculture from 2007, 2009, right around then. And the truth of the matter is that can grow exponentially if we get serious about it, you know? And it involves things like a microfinance option at one of the local credit unions, which would allow a farmer to open up more acreage that he or she might not have had the wherewithal to open up if we're basically saying, okay, we've got a guaranteed market for 10 acres of wheat. This is a random example. If you grow 10 acres of wheat, we will finance the fertility necessary to open up that back acreage back there, and we'll give you a year and a half to pay it back. And you know, there actually is a real discussion happening with one of the major credit unions in this valley right now that was instigated by Slow Money's activism in this community that will result in exactly that sort of facility, that sort of social finance facility for economic development locally to be made available. And Slow Money will have part responsibility in funneling candidates. I should put a plug in here real quick for the Sustainable Valley Technology Group, which is headed by one of the other founders. Not headed, but the executive director right now is is one of the other co-founders of Slow Money. In fact, Slow Money is operating sort of under their charitable umbrella right now, and over $40,000 has already been placed through a partnership of Slow Money and the Sustainable Valley Technology Group with food system entrepreneurs. 4 of them received awards amounting to $40,000 total, and it was basically an entrepreneur showcase that my associate Heather Stafford, a tremendous human being, was also involved in writing legislation for crowdfunding and social finance of sorts here in the state of Oregon right now. An amazing collaborative energy is developing in food system reform circles, and she is one of the great movers and shakers. And I just want to announce one more thing about Slow Money before I let you speak again, and that is on August 5th, we are going to have a second annual Homegrown Finance Forum, again, another example of social finance, where we're taking a stewardship role, or you might say a matchmaker role, in introducing local financiers and investors to members of the food sector so that they can make sure that they pitch their case to the investors about why organics is a really good investment here for us all locally.
John, you want to jump in on this?
Oh, I don't. This is my thing is more backyard aquaponics and kind of direct doing it yourself, kind of really shortening the loop.
Well, yeah, we talk about nano farming a lot, and I've had this vision of lots of different players, people actually producing things in their backyards, and it could be organic, soil grown produce, or done with aquaponics systems like the systems that you design. But I'd seen an opportunity to have a distributed farming model where you could have a lot of small players working together, producing food, and then that could either be distributed through some kind of a hub food distributor operation, or done at farmers markets. And I've even been thinking about doing something like an indoor farmers market that we do off season, that might attract some of these smaller growers that just have, say, a greenhouse in their backyard, or a big commercial greenhouse out in their field even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you could speak to that for a moment, talk about some of the systems that you've been developing and designing, and how that could come to fruition, through like a nano farming movement.
Mm-hmm. Well, the average American family of four spends about $13,000 per year on their grocery bill. And so if you can knock part of that down at a time when a lot of families are struggling with money, or maybe they're getting their time cut, if somebody starts transitioning so that they're actually producing, if they're able to produce some of their food, it can really impact their quality of life. And plus, they're able to produce a protein source, a really nutritious, healthy protein source, and nutritious vegetables and fruits. So it's it's not only an economic thing, but also a health thing. So the health of their family, is part of it. But I see that as something that interests me. I mean, the bigger picture interests me too. But it gets real exciting when families or groups of families or church groups or groups, schools even, kind of get involved in this mindset of generating their own food, kind of like bringing back the victory gardens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of it like that, but it is. It's like victory gardens for the modern age. But we have better tools at our disposal today. Like this aquaponics technology that we're all interested in. Theoretically should allow people to produce more with fewer resources.
Mm-hmm.
So can you speak to the benefits of aquaponics generally?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's tons of benefits. One of the main things, it's very water efficient. So we're kind of having our drought going on this year, where we're seeing the water levels drop in our local streams and waterways. And aquaponics is incredibly efficient when you compare it to your average backyard soil garden. So like a head of lettuce that you would grow in soil might take 30 or 40 gallons for you to finish off that head of lettuce. A lot of that water is being, lost to, it's seeping into the ground and not, or evaporating, and it's not necessarily getting taken up by the plants. But when you have a recirculating system, you're only losing water to evaporation or water that's being taken up by the plant. So it's way more efficient. So an aquaponic head of lettuce might take 2 gallons of water. So like in my home system right now, when it's really hot, I add about 4 gallons a day. So it's and that's for all the plants in my greenhouse. So it's really, really water efficient. So that's one of the key benefits.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is design systems where we're producing more with less, trying to reduce our need for water, reduce our need for energy, and other inputs like fertilizer. We get a lot of what we need from the fish themselves, but also the action of microbes, bacteria, funguses, and whatnot that exist in the root zone of the media beds. Go ahead, Andrew.
I just want to mention something that John himself taught me. Pardon me. Which is that the marriage of aquaculture and hydroponics, which is what aquaponics is, cancels out the negatives of each of those disciplines. Meaning, hydroponics is chemically intensive, for lack of a better term, because you're constantly in plain old hydroponics buying nutrients to pour into your system. In aquaponics, the fish take care of all that, and as long as you can grow your own fish food, you're reasonably self-sufficient. But the other side of it is that Aquaculture usually is associated with gross waste that has to be disposed of somewhere.
Yes.
But we sequester it in the form of vegetable matter.
Right. And like in my case, where I'm taking scrap vegetable matter and composting it to produce fish food, I'm kind of closing the circle there as much as I can. What do you think of this idea of distributed farming? This nano farming concept that I've been throwing around in my head.
John is a very brilliant person in that sense, because it is not only a niche, it is going to be necessary for everyone to take some marginal degree of responsibility for their own food production in a food scarce world. And everybody's going to be thinking along those lines at some point. They'll be like, I don't ever use my backyard swimming pool. Can I just float some plants on there? Mm-hmm. Will that get me some food? And John will be like, sure, you need to put a little shade structure over, or get some pumps and aerators and stuff. And then, or anybody who wants to consult on these projects should be getting this schooling right now. And in fact, I'm trying to get a research and development facility funded with state lottery funds at the Center for Sustainability at SOU, which would be a minimum 2,000 to 3,000 square foot greenhouse, to study and use as a test bed aquaponics operations and aquaponics facilities. For instance, John is a developer of technology and AquaponicTek. I would see a total place for them in this research and development facility. And, I'm trying to get it funded as an educational facility, but it's also aimed at commercialization. It's a special type of grant that comes from an organization known as Oregon Best. And the fact is, they work specifically with research universities towards commercialization of certain technologies. And why shouldn't aquaponics become one of those researched technologies? So I'd love to have John in on that. And, he and I have a close working relationship to some extent, although we're very busy with our own independent efforts.
Yeah, the SOU project sounds really good. So I'm looking forward to that. Because that's what it needs. It needs a bunch of people, taking measurements and going over the numbers and making it more efficient and more available to commercial growers and backyard growers. And I have a high hope for aquaponics. I think it's there's nothing I see that's going to stop it from just spreading and catching on with people.
So what people don't know about aquaponics is that it's an industry that's doubling in size every year. It's at freaking Epcot Center. It's everywhere. If you look around, it's proliferating like crazy everywhere.
Yeah.
Even in Asia and Australia and all those places.
Yes. Yeah, Australia is definitely ahead of the United States. By a few years.
Well, yeah, and that's just been primarily due to the fact that their water table dropped significantly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so they were trying to deal with the water rationing over there and come up with more efficient ways to produce food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one reason why it caught on so big and started spreading. It's because people wanted to produce their own backyard gardens, and aquaponics was so water efficient that it worked for them. But there's many other benefits to aquaponics, not just the water-wise portion, that it's can be run in a closed loop fashion or nearly closed loop, that you can generate your own fish feed, that you're not dependent on going and buying nutrients at the hydro store or something like that. Also, it's there have been many scientific papers published at this point that show that aquaponics very well could be better than traditional hydroponics in numerous areas. Growth rates, better nutrition in the plant, better health of the plant. And it kind of makes sense when you think we're using nature's principles here to grow our food, and nature has such a a lead time on this. I mean, nature's been doing it for millions and millions of years, so it's kind of worked out the kinks. And so
there's a lot of granularity that we can get into with what you just discussed, where some people are saying aquaponic produce is routinely perceived as being of superior taste and flavor.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
which makes sense. There's one particular paper by Nick Savadoff out of Canada. Yeah, and what happens with the aquaponics is you have a biologically active system, and it's that interplay between the fish, the plants, and the bacteria in the system, which helps the plant produce its own chemical signals within the plant. The plant's physiology actually changes. It's reacting to its environment, so it's producing things like more flavonoids and compounds in the plant that give it a better taste, and also compounds that can impact your health. It can make healthier herbs. And
well, a flavonoid is a natural, what's the word? Antibiotic. It basically feeds your immune system in some way or bolsters it.
Yeah, and then we interact with the plants by helping to change our physiology. So it just goes on and on.
Well, I got feedback that just bolsters that viewpoint from one of my customers this week. And I was telling you guys about that yesterday. One of my restaurant customers decided that they were no longer going to buy basil, or they're going to reduce their basil purchases from another supplier who's more of a mega producer, not local. But they go through a lot of basil, but they want to switch to purchasing more of mine, which they have to pay more for it because I'm more of a boutique operation, but they like the quality. They said the quality was a lot better, so that makes it worth more to them, of course.
Can we
go for it?
Can we talk about that? You see, you're a local producer, and what you've done is you've gone to clients who have an ethic to buy local.
Yes.
And in fact, it's arguable the fact that you do what you do strengthens their commitment to local because you produce good stuff. And they're like, hey, this is the freshest, best quality stuff I could get because it didn't travel a day on I-5. It just came up from the dang shop. It just got picked.
You take Thai basil, for example, which is extremely delicate. If I don't get that delivered, and lightly refrigerated, in less than an hour, it's going to start wilting pretty significantly, and so being able to harvest and then go directly to the site, get it directly to the customer, and oftentimes they start preparing with it immediately. If I take a delivery over to Thai Pepper, I'm going right into the kitchen and handing it to the guys who are preparing the meals right then, right there. And they don't take my deliveries until just at that point when all the kitchen staff is showing up and they're rocking and rolling. The customers are starting to walk in the door. It doesn't get any fresher than that, Mm-hmm. I mean, it's and of course the flavors, the textures, everything is better. And in a community like where we are, where we have a high level of tourist traffic. I mean, we completely depend upon tourist traffic, and that's why the restaurants here are so prolific.
Well, that's why my business model involves, for lack of a better term, catering to that market for the bulk of our sales. And yes, admittedly, that isn't the best thing for food system development, because really what we need is like 10 acres of aquaponics growing so much wholesale produce that we can service that we could service Whole Foods Northwest, which has already expressed an interest in buying Southern Oregon produce if it's aggregated kind of under one distributor. And we can...
Yeah, I see this as it's multifaceted. You've got a lot of different sides of this that can play into it, and some are more equipped than others. If if you've got the means for, in the land for a massive commercial greenhouse where you could efficiently produce a lot of food, then you've got margins that would allow you to enter the wholesale market. And where you're located is going to be different. You're going to be, out in the rural area, outside of the city, in a farming zone. I've repurposed a warehouse. I'm in a total urban setting close into the city, which can give us an opportunity for community outreach and get more, get the public more involved in seeing what this aquaponics thing is all about.
Well, do we have a second to talk about urban agriculture?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay, I wrote a paper for a class during my winter term. I'm in the final quarters of my environmental studies degree, and I took a class called Food, Power, and Agriculture, and I discussed in my research paper for that class what are the top 3 strategies for enhancing food security in the Rogue Valley. Now, I'm not going to go into what my paper says because I've already talked about some portions of it. It's really not a bunch of original ideas of mine. It's just a review of food system development literature across the world. But at any rate, one of them is called The Urban Food Revolution, Changing the Way We Feed Cities by New Society Publishers of Canada, published in 2011, and the author is P. Ladner. And it basically talks a little bit about things like vertical hydroponics and stuff like that. And there's other books that touch on the importance of food system innovation. So the thing about, I was just going to say this about aquaponics and urban environments. You, as you say, you've repurposed a warehouse, okay? There are places like in Chicago, like in a 90,000 square foot warehouse, that have stacked aquaponics inside that warehouse, all lighted by high efficiency lighting with multiple tanks operating year round. And they're trying to achieve such a density per acre that you can't even compare it to normal agriculture. In fact, UC Davis did a experiment to see how much food you could grow inside a 40-foot container. And it's like 22 acres worth of food if you're doing like microgreens, one crop after another continuously for a whole season. And it's amazing. And if we're in a situation where a genuine food crisis is upon us, sorry, I have a phone call coming in, but I'm not going to take it, obviously. If the genuine food crisis is upon us, then what are we supposed to do but take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and begin growing more food in the most resource-efficient manner possible? Because, yes, the vertical part of the value chain has to be developed, especially close to home, where your food miles are reduced to an absolute minimum. And we only grow 3% of the food that we consume in this valley, and this is just not the right proportion.
No, that's not sustainable. No, you end up being dependent, especially if something happens, and there's a major crisis, some sort of grid down situation. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some close calls. I mean, coming into the 2008, I'm going to call it a depression. Actually, started in 2007. I remember seeing grocery stores having some problems. They were having some financial issues, like the Albertsons near my store or near my home. They'd stopped stocking their shelves for a few weeks. And I remember popping in there and things were looking bare. And I thought maybe they were going to shut down. But these stores only stock about 3 days of food. At a time. So if something goes wrong, you could have a storm. For example, you look at Superstorm Sandy.
Why don't I read you? One of the summaries from my literature review? It's only a paragraph, and it's a summary of a book called "The Coming Famine: The Global Food Crisis and What We Can Do to Avoid It," published by the Regents of the University of California, Los Angeles. Summary insists that despite recent 2007-2008 food crises, we have not yet seen the real global famine, which is arriving faster than climate change. discusses resource shortages, water, land, and nutrients that will impact agricultural yields, leading to other social problems, delves into the plight of commercial fishing stagnation and global fish farming as a solution to the demand for protein. The author ties the food crisis to a loss of practical knowledge among the population and a lack of deeper understanding of soil dynamics, food system limitations, especially fossil fuel dependence, world hunger, and climate challenges figure centrally in the author's assessments. Now, I wrote that summary because I had to read the dang book and try to put it in a few words, but we're in a big crunch around food. It's almost a Malthusian crisis. And nobody wants to talk about it. It's not nightly news, but you read what the FAO, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, says about it. We're going to feed fewer and fewer people if we don't change the way we do agriculture.
Right, and the global elite agenda, has been to depopulate, and this isn't just theory. I've talked about this a lot on other programs, but I've read books written by Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, and they speak openly about depopulating the third world. And Bill Gates is addressing
all I have to say to that is there's no imagination in that whatsoever.
Exactly, and I completely disagree with them. And what Bill Gates does is he tries to implement this through vaccinations. And what's really sad is you see people buy into this. Like I know that the local Rotary clubs here in the Rogue Valley are dedicated to polio vaccinations in Africa, and but these vaccines are I mean there's collateral damage, and they know this, and that's part of that agenda to depopulate. And then we see other things going on that that people don't. Scientists especially don't know why, like the collapse of the fisheries in the Pacific Ocean, and we're seeing, the sardine population collapse and the herring population. These industrial fish, which are typically farmed to or harvested to produce food for farmed fish.
Oh, it's getting really bad. Like, certain African nations have had to sue the European Union for allowing ships from the European Union to overharvest in African waters and all sorts of craziness. The resource wars that are ahead of us, and they may be merely political and financial to begin with, are going to be very scary. I mean, oil is not the only thing that's peaking. It's water, it's phosphorus, it's any number of resources that we have relied upon to get us this far, and now we're going to have to use far less of those things to feed even more people. And I don't understand why people aren't up in arms about this. In fact, some people are. One of the great researchers of world issues, Lester Brown, who wrote Plan B and a number of other things and founded the Earthwatch Institute and now the Earth Policy Institute, well, he wrote a book in the last couple of years called Full Planet, Empty Plates. And it's something about the new era of global food scarcity and the geopolitics of global food scarcity. And he's basically saying, and I heard him speak at the American Renewable Energy Day conference 2 summers ago in Aspen, Colorado, and he said out loud to everybody there, he said, "For years I resisted the thought that the food system was the weak link, but now I see it is." And he wrote a whole book on it. And there is a clarion call for all of us right now to say, uh-oh, we're about to lose the food system, dudes. We can't do that. That's a bad thing. Let's fix it locally to begin with. I want to grow more like 5, 10, 25% of our local foodstuffs here.
Right.
I'm not a total... I am into sovereignty like you are, and I want to basically tell the multinationals to go home, which we basically did by passing a GMO measure here in 2 adjacent counties, by the way, at more than the majority, big time more than the majority, like 66% of the vote in Jackson County anyway. And that basically means we have an ethic already established here in the population, which is sovereign in some way or another. And so we need to speak more to that impulse and say, yo, let's build a local economy that works better for everybody. Let's fix the food deserts. They don't have to be there. Fix that stuff.
And through these new methods of farming, I believe that we can be more productive. I think that the planet has the ability to support more people.
Like, for instance, if a social business like Southern Oregon Aquaponics saw that there was a really bad blight of food deserts, and he said, the person who ran that company, maybe me, said, "Hey, why don't we look for a place to erect an aquaponics greenhouse way up there in North Medford as one of our next facilities, so that we can feed those food deserts more directly with fewer food miles." Because why? Because that is our company ethic. It is no food miles if at all possible. Have people come walk up to your greenhouse because you're right there in the urban ghetto or whatever, and they'll just get their box from you. Right. You just solved the food desert problem. Boom.
You were telling me yesterday that you have your own CSA.
Well, out of my backyard, I have a half-acre property. See, my view is if I'm going to be a farmer, I have to actually farm and get food in people's bellies. Mm-hmm. And so I put out on the Mama's Medicine Wheel mailing list, which is probably the oldest email list in Ashland, specifically for mothers with children, young children, and I subscribed at least 3 or 4 out of 7 of my CSA shares. Actually, I just sold another one yesterday, so I have 8 shares in my CSA to these mothers with children. So when they eat my fresh vegetables, the mother's milk goes, with all that nutrition, goes straight into the baby. And I'm like, whoa, this is a sacred trust. I love this. So yes, it probably doesn't earn me a dime to run a CSA. I probably just break even doing it. But I have to be a farmer if I'm going to be a food system reformer. Otherwise, I'm just talking out of my hat.
Yeah, and it allows you to test out concepts and refine your production techniques and and your processes and your business model as a whole. Plus,
and discipline your life.
It's good exercise.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with charity. Charity is an important aspect. Even in a free market economy, you have charity.
I have a slightly more revolutionary way of looking at food production. It's basically saying we're making natural capital and social capital more important than industrial capital or financial capital. I don't care to be too vitriolic about the oppression under which we are all operating, but it really sucks. And what we need to do is shift that. And the way to do it is by building local economies that are resilient, socially just, and environmentally sustainable. And if we can do that in the next 10 years in the Rogue Valley with an aim of growing another 10 to 20% of our own foodstuffs here locally, if not developing regional markets for our produce at the same time, then what I'm talking about is, food system failure is the only alternative if we can't do that. So I just want to do that. Let's just do that.
Well, what's going to happen is if the food system fails, and it's extremely fragile, you know that the megacorps are going to step in hand with government to basically, operate the FEMA camps, operate, the soup kitchens and whatnot.
We just tell them to go home if we have enough local production. If we have enough local production and FEMA rolls in, we just say, yo, guys, check this out. This is the food system that we've developed. You look at it and you tell me if you can manage it any better than we can. If you think you can take this over, or if you think we're going to train you to take over our food system, which we built ourselves, you got another thing coming. You're going to have to come and do your worst. But what I'll tell FEMA at the door is we got this shit. We got this together.
Yeah, they'd probably try to take it, under Obama's executive order. What was that?
They're going to have to take me first.
Yeah, it was the National Defense Preparedness Executive Order that he issued a couple of years ago. Lays claim to all means of.
I know all about it.
All about it. Yeah, it's a bunch of BS, and I would never hand over any of my equipment or resources to them.
Well, for people who don't know, we are the state of Jefferson, which basically incorporates much of Northern California from Shasta towards us, and then I don't know how much further north of us we consider this mythical state of Jefferson to exist in, but we believe that there is a potential for ecotopia to be established up here with green economies, social economies. We don't need to be wholly dependent on the Federal Reserve note as the only medium of exchange that we use to transact business. We can build social and natural capital into our economy as at least as important as Federal Reserve notes, if not more important. And that kind of stuff is revolutionary talk, almost blasphemy to people. But I tell you, these are the times that try men's souls. And if we don't do a few things to bolster ourselves against the predatory economics that are now in vogue, we will pay worse than we can imagine.
It's true. And, moving over into more of an agricultural economy is good on many levels. I mean, I am totally, absolutely against GMOs right now, so far. I mean, if other information is presented to me, I will evaluate it. I don't like to see government involved in enforcing a GMO ban, but it is what it is, and we should make the best of it. It does create an opportunity, though, to promote this area, this region, this place called Jefferson, as a place that produces pristine food, and that could even draw in more tourist traffic. You could have like foodies come into the area, frequenting the restaurants, going to the farmers market.
Did you actually have John talk about that? Because John has a really good rap on that.
Oh, how aquaponics can tie in with tourism? Well, there's a lot of international interest in aquaponics, and people will travel, thousands of miles to learn and study or see really good examples of aquaponic farms or systems. And I think that this would be an excellent place to do that. There's no reason why the Southern Oregon, the Rogue Valley can't be part of that. I think,
and we already have some major facilities here.
Mm-hmm, yeah, we have some dynamite stuff going on here. So I think it's just a matter of time before that happens, where we'll be having more educational stuff going on, which kind of ties in with the tourism industry. All goes together.
Well, I see that happen a little bit already. I'll get emails from people that are coming to the area. They'll be coming to Ashland for vacation, and they'll want to spend a day or two working on the farm, working in my shop as volunteers. And I always have plenty of things to do, so I always accept the offers. And at the end of it, most people seem to act as if they didn't enjoy the work that much. I love the work, and I love, at the end of the day, I love that physical tire.
Mainly because your place stinks, because you got garbage in there growing worms on. Growing worms on garbage. Nobody wants to be around no garbage.
Oh man, that stuff smells like perfume to me.
Yeah. Well, it definitely smells. I noticed it yesterday. Hey, can I say one quick thing, just sort of wrap up the aquaponics discussion a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. We just have a couple minutes left here.
Yeah. It is well suited to distributed agriculture, as John has already highlighted. You can have it in your backyard. You can have it in a warehouse like you've got it. You could have it in a community garden setting. You could do it at a university, or even at an elementary school or something. But the point is, the food system isn't yet fully developed in this country any more than the so-called, free market. And what I'm basically trying to say is intelligent development is possible with aquaponics, and it may need to be a cornerstone in a place like this where aridity is beginning to affect water supplies. I mean, I'm not kidding. I don't know how we're going to grow 25% of our own food here if we don't do it with a heap of intelligent design based strategies such as aquaponics. And
Yeah.
the training component, as John has said, will attract people from all over the world, and it might even be done in such a fashion as to specifically attract the ecotourism set. If you build like a botanical garden that's like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and it's yet at the same time a food production facility, but it's also full of ornate and ornamental plants and all that stuff.
Right.
Dude, it would bring a ton of people in here.
True.
We already get 250,000 people a year for Oregon Shakespeare Festival. Won't they pop on over to the botanical gardens?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a really good idea.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic.
Let's get it going.
Okay, you guys that are listening that want to invest in this, hit us up. We can make this happen.
Yeah.
Well, we've got ways to vet this stuff. We're also taking business courses, John and I, all the time to learn how to run commercial operations. This is a business, and it's got a lot of neat aspects that are interdisciplinary, and you have to be kind of an encyclopedic nerd like me or John or you, Drew, to be able to do this stuff, because you have to know about 100 different things.
Yeah. It requires a huge variety of skills.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's easy. I mean, that's one thing I do want to kind of let people know about, that it is easy. It's like in my system, I basically feed the fish and spend a little bit of time, checking on plant health, and besides that, it drives itself.
Yeah, if you can keep the system balanced, and that requires like if you can test the pH and the chlorine content of your pool, you can run an aquaponics system in your backyard.
Yeah.
But I'm saying to build an industrial, commercial system of 10 acres is a big undertaking.
Yeah, you definitely need to pay attention to a lot of things to do it correctly. Otherwise, it won't succeed. So you do need to do things correctly. It's very true.
Well, I guess this was our first aquaponics. You can listen to